The Morrison family reunion was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking against each other as my relatives celebrated their various successes in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. I stood near the window watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold, trying to ignore the familiar whispers that followed me like shadows. "There's Emma," my Aunt Patricia stage whispered to anyone who would listen. "Still stuck in that entry-level position at what was it? Some consulting firm?" I took another sip of champagne, letting the expensive bubbles roll across my tongue. If only they knew that the some consulting firm was actually Phoenix Enterprises, and I wasn't stuck in an entry-level position. I owned the entire company. My cousin Michael, fresh from closing what he called a game-changing real estate deal, swaggered over to me, his designer suit practically screaming new money. "Emma, still working that boring office job?" I smiled politely, remembering the email I'd received just that morning about Michael's company desperately seeking a meeting with Phoenix Enterprises CEO. They needed a miracle, and they didn't realize they were sneering at their only hope. "Oh, you know me," I said mildly. "Just plugging away." "You should really consider doing something more ambitious," he continued, gesturing with his champagne glass. "I mean, look at everyone here. Thomas just made partner at Goldman Sachs, Sarah's running her own tech startup, and I'm about to close the biggest deal of my career." He paused, his smile turning condescending. "We just hate seeing you waste your potential on such ordinary work." If he only knew that the biggest deal of his career would require my signature tomorrow morning. Phoenix Enterprises was the anonymous buyer his company had been desperately courting, the one willing to save them from the brink of bankruptcy. "We'll see," I replied, hiding my amusement behind another sip of champagne. The thing about my family is that they've always measured success in very specific ways: corner offices, luxury cars, charity gala invitations. When I graduated from Harvard Business School and chose to start at the bottom of a consulting firm instead of taking Uncle Robert's offer to fast-track me through his company, they treated it like a personal betrayal. "Such a waste," my mother had said, shaking her head. "All that education and you want to be a nobody?" But I had a plan. While my cousins were busy broadcasting their successes on social media and competing for the family's approval, I was quietly building something extraordinary. Phoenix Enterprises started in a tiny office with just me and two brilliant analysts I'd poached from my old consulting firm. We specialized in corporate restructuring and strategic acquisitions, operating through a complex web of shell companies that kept my ownership private. 10 years later, Phoenix Enterprises was a powerhouse, though you'd never know it from looking at our modest downtown office. We owned controlling interests in dozens of companies, managed billions in assets, and had a reputation for turning failing businesses into gold mines. All while keeping my role as founder and CEO completely anonymous. "Emma, darling." My Aunt Catherine's voice cut through my thoughts. "Come here, we're taking family photos. Well, of the successful ones, you understand." She laughed as if she'd made a clever joke. I joined the group, standing at the edge where they always put me. Thomas, the Goldman Sachs partner, stood front and center, his wife Lauren draped elegantly on his arm. Michael posed with his signature smirk, probably already planning how to use the photo in his next marketing campaign. "Oh, Emma," Sarah, my startup founder cousin, called out. "Would you mind taking the picture instead? We want everyone who's really achieved something in it." I watched them all nod in agreement, not one of them objecting to this casual cruelty. Tomorrow they would learn exactly what I had achieved, but for now I simply took the camera with a placid smile. "Of course," I said. "Anything for family." Later that evening, as the reunion wound down, I overheard Michael in an intense phone conversation, his earlier bravado replaced by barely contained panic. "What do you mean Phoenix Enterprises wants to meet tomorrow? I thought we had a week." He ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in frustration. "No, you don't understand. This deal has to go through. The whole company depends on it." I checked my watch. 14 hours until our meeting. Michael had no idea that his company's financial records were already spread across my desk, revealing years of mismanagement and risky decisions that had left them teetering on the edge of collapse. The real estate empire he bragged about was built on sand, and only Phoenix Enterprises' intervention could save it. "Everything okay?" I asked innocently as he ended his call. He forced a smile, straightening his tie. "Of course. Just finalizing some details on my big deal. Not that you'd understand No offense, but corporate acquisitions are a bit above your pay grade. I nodded sympathetically. Probably. Though I did hear something about Phoenix Enterprises making moves in the real estate sector. They're quite impressive, aren't they? Michael scoffed. Phoenix is just another soulless corporation. Tomorrow I'm meeting their CEO and I'll show them how real business is done. Watch and learn, cousin. This is how you become successful. Can't wait, I replied, gathering my things to leave. Good luck with your meeting. As I walked toward the exit, my mother caught my arm. Emma, wait. Your father and I have been talking. Maybe it's time you reconsidered Uncle Robert's offer. You're not getting any younger and clearly this consulting career isn't taking you anywhere. I gently removed her hand. Thanks, Mom, but I'm exactly where I need to be. But don't you want to be successful like your cousins? To make us proud. I looked around the ballroom at my successful relatives, Michael with his failing company, Sarah with her startup that was burning through investor cash, Thomas who was about to be passed over for a bigger promotion at Goldman. I am successful, Mom. You just don't know it yet. She sighed, the same disappointed sound I'd heard my entire adult life. I just don't understand why you insist on being so ordinary. I kissed her cheek and headed for the door, pausing only to look back at my family one last time. They were all there, congratulating themselves on their achievements, completely unaware that the ordinary cousin they'd dismissed for years was about to change everything. My phone buzzed, an email from my executive team confirming tomorrow's meeting with Michael's company. I smiled, remembering all the times my family had excluded me from their photos, their celebrations, their definition of success. Tomorrow they would learn that true success doesn't need to announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the corner taking pictures and biding its time. In my car, I opened my laptop to review Michael's company's financials one last time. The numbers were even worse than we'd initially thought. His empire was leveraged to the hilt with multiple properties facing foreclosure. Phoenix Enterprises' offer was his only hope of avoiding complete collapse. I thought about all the family dinners where Michael had bragged about his business acumen, all the times he'd talked over me when I tried to offer advice. Tomorrow he would sit across from me, not as a condescending cousin, but as a desperate businessman seeking salvation. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed again, a text from Sarah. Hey cuz, saw you leave early. Too much success in one room for you? Face with tears of joy. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled up the latest report on her startup. 3 months of runway left, massive burn rate, product development stalled. Soon enough she'd be in my office too, though she didn't know it yet. That's the thing about my family. They were so busy looking successful that they forgot to build something sustainable. But tomorrow at least one of them would learn the difference. I drove home to my penthouse apartment, the one my family thought I couldn't afford on my entry-level salary. Tomorrow would be interesting to say the least. The next morning I arrived at Phoenix Enterprises' real headquarters, not the modest consulting office my family knew about, but the top 3 floors of the city's most prestigious business tower. My executive assistant, David, met me at the private elevator. Michael Morrison and his team arrived 15 minutes ago, he reported, falling into step beside me. They're waiting in the silver conference room. And he smirked slightly, he's already asked twice if the CEO is running late. I smiled, checking my reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. My power suit was a far cry from the intentionally modest clothes I'd worn at the reunion. Let's not keep him waiting any longer. The silver conference room had a stunning view of the city skyline, but Michael wasn't admiring it. He was pacing, his expensive Italian shoes wearing a path in the plush carpet. 2 of his board members sat at the table, their expressions grim. The CEO of Phoenix Enterprises will be here momentarily, David announced, holding the door for me. Michael turned, his practiced smile freezing as recognition dawned. Emma? What are you lost? I walked to the head of the table, setting down my portfolio with deliberate calm. No, Michael. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But... He glanced at David, then back to me. We're waiting for an important meeting. With the CEO of Phoenix Enterprises. I know. I sat down, enjoying the confusion on his face. That would be me. The silence that followed was absolute. Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. One of his board members dropped his pen, the sound echoing in the quiet room. This is a joke, Michael finally managed. You're a junior consultant. You've been working in that tiny office downtown for years. That office? I smiled. It's where I take meetings with people who don't need to know who I really am. This, I gestured to the elegant conference room, is where I make decisions about which companies live or die. I opened my portfolio and withdrew his company's financial records. Speaking of which, shall we discuss the real state of Morrison Real Estate Holdings? Michael's face had gone pale. How did you get these? I've had them for months. Every desperate loan, every hidden debt, every property facing foreclosure. I spread the documents across the table. You've been living on borrowed time, cousin. Time that's just run out. One of the board members leaned forward, his face ashen. Mr. Morrison, is this accurate? Are we really this close to bankruptcy? Michael tugged at his collar. It's not. I mean, we have plans. No, I cut in firmly. You don't. What you have is exactly two options. I pulled out another document, the acquisition agreement. Phoenix Enterprises can acquire your company at a fair market value, protect your investors and save what's left of your reputation. Or what? Michael whispered. Or I can walk away, and by this time next week everyone, including our family, will know exactly how thoroughly you've failed. The board members were already reaching for the acquisition agreement, their eyes scanning the terms with desperate hope. Michael just stood there, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Why? He finally asked. Why didn't you tell any of us? Tell you what? That while you were all bragging about your surface-level success, I was building something real. That the cousin you mockingly offered to teach about real business could buy and sell your company 10 times over. I leaned back in my chair. Would you have believed me? Or would you have found a way to take credit for my success, just like you've always done? A knock at the door interrupted us. David entered with another familiar face, Sarah, our startup founder cousin, looking considerably less confident than she had at the reunion. Emma. He froze, taking in the scene. What are you? I have a meeting with Phoenix Enterprises. You do, I confirmed. About your startup's desperate need for emergency funding, correct? Sarah's jaw dropped as understanding dawned. Yes. And you're 3 months away from complete collapse. I pulled out another folder, her company's financials. Shall we discuss your options while Michael reviews the acquisition agreement? The next hour was a blur of signatures, terms, and shattered illusions. By the time it was over, I owned controlling interest in both my cousin's companies. Michael would keep his job barely, but under close supervision from my team. Sarah's startup would get its funding, but with strict oversight and a complete restructuring of her executive team. As they prepared to leave, both considerably humbler than they'd arrived, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother, having lunch with Uncle Robert. He still thinks his offer to help you find a real career is open. Please consider it. I showed the message to my cousins. Should I tell them now or let them find out when the press release goes out this afternoon? Michael winced. They'll never believe it unless they see it themselves. True. I stood up, straightening my jacket. David, please send invitations for a family dinner at my penthouse tonight. Everyone who was at the reunion. Let's say 7 p.m. Of course, Ms. Morrison. And shall I prepare the meeting room for your 2 p.m. with Thomas's Goldman Sachs team? Sarah's eyes widened. Thomas too. Oh yes, I smiled. That partnership position he's so proud of? It's about to be offered to someone else. Unless, of course, Phoenix Enterprises decides to intervene. After they left, I walked to the window, looking out over the city I'd quietly conquered while my family was busy underestimating me. David appeared at my shoulder. Your mother already replied to the dinner invitation, he reported. She wants to know if she should bring anything to your little apartment. I laughed. Just their expectations. Those are about to be thoroughly adjusted. The rest of the day passed in a parade of meetings, each one adding another piece to my family's collective comeuppance. Thomas's Goldman Sachs situation was even worse than I'd thought. He'd been covering up significant losses, hoping for a miracle. I would provide that miracle, but like his siblings, it would come with strings attached. At 6:45 p.m. I stood in my penthouse watching my family arrive in the private elevator. Their faces as they stepped into the 5,000 square foot space were a study in dawning realization. Emma, My mother gasped, taking in the museum-quality art and sweeping city views. How can you afford? Good evening, everyone, I interrupted smoothly. Welcome to my actual home. Not the one-bedroom rental you all assumed I lived in. Uncle Robert sputtered, his face reddening. But your job. Let's talk about my job. I gestured for everyone to sit at the massive dining table. Michael, Sarah, would you like to start? Or should I? They exchanged glances, then Michael cleared his throat. Emma owns Phoenix Enterprises. She's the one who saved my company today. The explosion of questions was immediate and overwhelming. I let them shout over each other for a moment before raising my hand for silence. Yes, I own Phoenix Enterprises. Yes, I'm the CEO you've all been reading about in the financial papers. And yes, I looked at Thomas, who was checking his phone with growing panic. I'm the one who's about to decide the future of several people in this room. Why didn't you tell us? My mother whispered. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. When have any of you ever really listened to me? You were too busy celebrating each other's surface success to notice I was building something real. I walked to the window, remembering all the family photos I'd been asked to take instead of join. Tomorrow the press releases go out. Phoenix Enterprises' acquisition of Morrison real estate. Our emergency funding of Sarah's startup. Our intervention in Thomas's Goldman Sachs situation. By this time tomorrow, everyone will know exactly who I am. But we're family, Aunt Patricia protested weakly. We should have known first. Family. I turned back to them. Was I family when you excluded me from photos? When you mocked my boring job? When you treated me like a cautionary tale? The silence was heavy with realization and regret. From now on, I continued, things will be different. Those of you whose companies I now control will learn how real business is done. Those of you who look down on me will learn about true success. And all of you will learn that sometimes the person you dismissed today might be signing your checks tomorrow. I raised my glass in a toast, savoring the moment. To family, and to finally seeing things as they really are. One by one they raised their glasses, their hands shaking slightly. The family dynamic had shifted permanently and we all knew it. Later that night, after they'd all left, I sat in my home office reviewing the day's events. A photo from the previous night's reunion sat on my desk, the one I'd been asked to take instead of join. Tomorrow I'd have a new photo taken, me at the head of the Phoenix Enterprises boardroom, my family's fate in my hands. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Michael. I get it now. Why you kept quiet all these years. Watching us trip over our own egos while you built an empire. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Actions had always spoken louder than words in our family. Tomorrow they would all learn just how loud mine could be. The next morning, as the press releases went out and my family's phones exploded with notifications, I sat in my office at Phoenix Enterprises, reading the headlines. Phoenix Enterprises CEO revealed. Emma Morrison's quiet rise to power. Morrison Real Estate Holdings acquired in surprise move, tech startup saved by founder's cousin in dramatic twist. Success, I had learned, doesn't need to announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the corner taking pictures and biding its time. And sometimes, when the moment is right, it steps into the light and changes everything. I picked up my phone and typed a quick message to my mother. About Uncle Robert's offer. I think I'm doing just fine on my own. But thanks for your concern. Then I turned back to my work. After all, I had an empire to run.